Hello and welcome to Talk It Out, where we talk it out. I'm Duryea Rashad and I'm your host. Thank you for joining us today. And if you haven't already done so, please like, subscribe, comment below. This forum was created as a safe space where people of opposing viewpoints could engage in thoughtful and productive dialogue in a respectful way, keeping in mind that it isn't always about being right or wrong. Sometimes it's just about listening and being heard. So I would like you all to welcome my panelists, my excellent and highly esteemed panelists. I'm going to start with my godfather, Shelton Stroman Ennis, who was a pioneer for gay rights and the right to be married, especially in Atlanta. When I was young, I was very young when he actually got married and adopted his son. And it was one of the events that shaped my life. So he's here with us today. Shelton, can you wave? Everybody wave when I introduce you. Yeah. This is Christopher Steele, who is a college buddy of mine with a BFA in theater performance. We also have Justin Draper. He's been a dance coach and instructor for 15 years, and he's currently working in the Atlanta area. And we also have another one of my college friends and a longtime life friend, Garrett Gray, who's an artist, actor, and educator living in New York City, who's also got a BFA in theater performance. Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having us.
Awesome. Everybody sound so professional, you know what I mean? Okay. So first, the way we usually like to start the show, this was a show that was birthed during the pandemic, coronavirus. So I like to touch in with everybody, see how they're doing, making sure that, you know, if you had something great happen this week, if you did it, tell me about what you're experiencing. Also, this is I guess it was last week when George Floyd, was it this week or last week?
Last week,
yeah. George Floyd was killed last week, along with Tony McDade, who we're going to talk about a little more today. And so I just kind of want to check in with everybody and see how they're doing. If anyone wants to go first.
Well, since I'm right here, dealing with the pandemic itself, you know, just trying to keep the family together. Since we're all in the house together, we decided to take a road trip, and we rented an RV. And just took a road trip down to Alabama coast. And had a good time in Alabama coast, just me and my son and husband, just to get away from the house because, you know, you ever seen that little meme or the little gift that says, I hate this house, I hate this house. That's what we were getting at because we're in the house so much. So we took some time away and now we're back and now we're dealing with all the Black Lives Matter situation that's going on with all the stuff that's going on where everybody is marching and doing those things. But I mean, we're just staying together and talking to our son about what it means to actually go outside of the house and how to take care of himself if anything happens with him as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. I actually have some questions for you later, but I'm going to wait till we get our introduction. Would anyone go next?
I'll hop in. So quarantine's been an interesting trek for me because I was in New York City, which was the epicenter, like March 9th, and then I went to South Carolina and stayed with family for a bit, and then I'm just recently getting back up here. But it's been interesting. Like when it first happened, I was kind of like really creative. Like creative juices were kind of just like really going. So I started like creating things and then that kind of petered off and I was like, I don't want to create anything anymore. And so I was just down south at home, just kind of like taking it all in. And then my sister is moving out. So we had to come back up to New York, move all her stuff out. And I decided to stay and see what the numbers would do, not knowing that riots would start taking part, or protests and riots would start taking part all over the United States of America, and specifically in New York City, which is like an island, so it makes it like a little bit, or Manhattan specifically, it makes it a little bit more kind of antsy, and curfews are a little bit weirder. but I guess overall, it's just been a really cool reflecting time. Um, these past couple of weeks, like since George, well, first Ahmaud Arbery happened, and I went to like the protest down in Brunswick because that's where my father's from. And then I think Breonna happened after that, or was that before? I can't even remember. It happened after because it took them 2 months to arrest people for freaking Ahmaud. But so when it comes to that part of everything that happened, it's I don't know, it's been reflective. I found myself kind of taking a step back from it and just kind of allowing myself to not say anything. I feel like I've done my part as a protester and stuff before, and it's just I'm taking this time as self-care. Like eventually I'll be ready to go out and like stomp the pavement, but right now I'm just not. I'm not in the space for it, to be honest. So I send money when I can, and I battle Facebook trolls, but I can't go outside.
Right? You got to get the trolls now. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Chris, Justin, and either one of you like to go?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So it's a very similar situation for a lot of us. But for me specifically, I work with high school age kids full time. So when we were looking at the end of our competitive season being effectively canceled, um, not even 2 weeks before they were getting ready to go to championships out of state, it was a huge blow to the kids. And then for that to then snowball into the rest of their school year being at home, it was a very confusing time for them. They still had stuff in their lockers. They had half of their books at home. They were being mandated to, shift into virtual learning. It was a very hard and very, confusing time for them. And then on top of that, they're not allowed the opportunity to, go through their regular routine of seeing their friends, in the hall, different classes, having that social element as an outlet. And that was the biggest impact for me, was for my kids. And it's unfortunate because we think of like the extracurricular clubs and whatever stuff that they do as being something extra to their day. It's not essential, but what we're learning now is it is the most essential part of their daily routine for some of them, because they can hit the books all they want at home, but they're really not getting that enrichment that they need to fire their brain on all four cylinders, and they've become stagnant in so many ways. And it's especially trying because all I can really do from afar is invite them to be on Zoom meetings and like, hey, let's chit chat and like, let's have a good time and try to distract them for a little bit. But all I can do is just support them from afar, especially when it's come to things like now the Black Lives Matter movement has regained strength. I went out and I was protesting back in 2016 when this happened the last time, and it echoes so much of that now. And they're so tapped into the social sphere of what's going on because they are sitting at home doing nothing. And so I think that's a lot of people's eyes on the Black Lives movement now, is that half of them are still out of work, half of them are still, reduced hours, all of the kids are still at home. Their school years are over, if not winding down. And I think that's one reason why there's so much attention being focused on the Black Lives movement now, is because of those factors. And it it's been a fire that's being slowly stoked over time, and it's unfortunately just had a huge powder keg thrown on top of it, unfortunately, when it comes to some of the policies put forth by the current White House administration. And you can't help but deny that fact. And so having those discussions with my kids and with my peers as well has dominated the majority of my day recently. But it is what it is, and we can only hope for it to change down the line. But I hold out hope, that when we have the opportunity to go to the polls in not only these primary weeks that we're currently in, but also the general election that's coming up in November, that people will take that energy through that time as well, and not let this kind of end in the next couple of weeks. So that's kind of where my head's at right now, kind of where my focus is at right now. And then whenever whenever we can kind of get over a hump of planning uncertainty when it comes to next school year, I'll have a little bit more of a distraction on my plate. But right now I'm just in a holding pattern with most things professional, and that's it.
Thank you. I mean, I identify with a lot of that, especially the idea about being around children, which is kind of something I want to talk to you and Shelton about, because you guys are directly trying to guide children through this crazy time. And I want to ask about that, but I also want to get Chris's intro. So, Chris, how's your quarantine been?
So when the quarantine started, I actually had just recently been cast and started rehearsals for Eurydice.
Oh no! What part did you get?
The same part. I was going to reprise my role as Lord of the Underworld. Yeah.
That's crazy.
And I was so excited. I was so excited about it. And then like 2.5 weeks into rehearsal, we got the memo that, the rest of the week's rehearsals had been canceled. And then after that week, the entire show got canceled and the rest of the season got canceled. And so it was just like kind of a snowball effect. The good news is I was actually selected to be on the play review committee for the theater that was producing the show. And we actually, through Zoom meetings, lots of Zoom meetings and open like reads and everything, we selected and picked the next season. So I was a part of selecting and picking that, which kind of helped alleviate, because we got some really great shows coming up next season that I really want to audition for. And it'll help alleviate the pain a little bit of missing out on reprising that role, because I was so excited to do it. But really, literally, other than that, my life hasn't changed that much, kind of against the grain of everyone else here. I have, for the last few years, have been working in retail currently as an operations manager at like an Apple store. It's not actually an Apple store. It's a premier partner of Apple. It's called Simply Mac, because all the Apple stores actually closed, but Simply Macs did not, and we were deemed essential. And they kept on just like a very skeleton crew of us. So it was literally like open to close every day, except for, the 2 days that everyone gets off. And then, we're back to, open to close for, the next week. I mean, it's been nonstop since all the Apple stores are closed. We are basically freaking just inundated all day long. It's kind of a nonstop circus of crazy because everyone's trying to get computers to work from home, computers to school from home, a phone screen fixed because it's broken, and that's how they do their entire job, and they can't wait a week because that's our next available appointment a week from the day they walk in. It's been, I've never been yelled at quite as much, like quite so frequently. I've never been, just like harassed on a daily basis just as much as I have been recently. And it's been kind of a drain. And then all this, other stuff that's going on. There, have been at least 2 riots in the town where I work. I currently live in Athens, Georgia.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm surprised by that.
You are?
Yeah, but keep going. I'll talk about it.
Okay. Well, anyways, and like actually last night there was supposed to be a hit on the shopping center that my store is located in. So they made us close early because there was apparently at 8:08 in, memorial of, the whole incident, like they were going to riot the place and like loot the whole place. And so it was just like, it's kind of been scary, but I have been so tired. Like I haven't been able to go out and do very much, though I, have been with my own peers, especially just talking about it as much as possible, like just trying to get people talking about it. Actually, one of my girlfriends yesterday, we were having a social distance Zoom drink, and she was telling me that her best friend of 12 years, who literally lives right beside her, made a comment to her the day before that was so incredibly racist and so incredibly just, not appropriate at this time, that she just doesn't even know how they can be friends anymore. Like, she doesn't know how that kind of thinking escaped her for 12 years, or whether she was hiding it, and like what kind of person she really was. But they got into an escalated argument over this one comment, and people who usually speak every 20 minutes are like, they haven't spoken in 3 days, so it's just kind of been, it's bringing out weird things in people. I don't know. I don't know what's going on in the world.
There he is. Oh, hey, Chris.
Hey
Hey.
So
super sorry about that.
1 second. Hold on, everybody. Hold on 1 second.
I think I'm all lopsided, yeah.
Hello, everybody. Joining us right now is Julian. He is a friend of mine. You've seen him on some of the past episodes. Just to remind you, he currently has a bachelor's of science in computer science and math. Welcome, Julian. A little late.
Hello, how is everyone today?
We're
We
good.
good.
Yeah, all right, very good, very good.
Just wave when I say your name. This is Shelton. This is my godfather. This is Chris.
All right, nice to meet you.
Hello.
Garrett. And
Okay. No.
we already did the intros. Basically, it's actually perfect timing because the last person just finished theirs, and so you can give yours. Just in relation to how you're doing with quarantine, with everything that's kind of been happening in the media. Where's your headspace as far as self-care?
Where's all that? In shambles, I suppose. Not shambles, but
Right.
these times are just like hard, I guess. I think the last time I spoke to you, which wasn't that long ago, but I was saying the same thing. I've been like really yearning for like physical contact with some of my friends and stuff. Like, just because the timing where it is in my life, it's like it's something I need right now. And it's like, but I can't really get that in the same way. So it's a little bit of a downer in that way, but it's not too bad because it's nice because like life is kind of on pause. It's weird, but it's a nice opportunity for everyone to kind of like reprioritize and figure out where they want to go in life. So it's nice.
He's short and sweet all the time. I like that. I like hearing everything that you all are talking about because I feel like you all are talking about some points that a lot of people maybe either don't know how to express or haven't expressed. I kind of want to just point out some things that you all spoke about. The first thing that came to my mind was actually Shelton, because not only are you, and this will become more relevant later on in our discussion, not only are you a black man, you're a black man in a relationship with a man who is an interracial child, correct?
Correct.
So your husband's, I want to say black and what?
Guyanese.
Chinese?
Guyanese. From Guyana.
Okay. And you also are LGBTQ, and you're a parent of a black man, a young black man.
Yes. So
I just feel like on the last episode, we talked to a preacher who is a parent, and he's not able to be with his son because his son is in California. And I just kind of want to talk to you about how do you balance all of that while also helping to navigate him through this world, helping not to make him afraid, but also to be prepared for the kind of things that he's going to deal with, being the child of a gay relationship and being a black man.
Well, we started out early with Jonathan. My son is Jonathan. We started early with him. We did, first of all, we were part of the marriage equality here in Georgia. So that became one of the things that was obvious to him because people started noticing him in school because he was also in the media with us. He was the reason why we decided to stand up for gay marriage in the first place, because he wanted to see us married just like he saw his best friends, mom and dad married. He wanted to know why we weren't married as well. So, we started out young with him, let him know the difference in different types of families and the obstacles that he may occur or happen during his time in school, and how to defend himself when it comes to people talking to him about his fathers and sexuality and all that. So we try to defend him on an earlier basis, reading different things to him, talking to him, and just having clear communication with him as he grew up. He's now 15. So
how young was he the first time that, if you don't mind sharing, how young was he the first time this came up and you actually had a dialogue with him? And anyone else can feel free to discuss openly.
now I'd probably say when he was probably about 7 or 8, that he started to learn and ask questions. I don't see a mother or father. I only see 2 dads. So that's when we really started having conversations with him. Even when he was young as a child, we would read different little Penguin the King and I, different little stories that, my 2 dads, we could read those type of stories to him. So he would have some type of understanding even as a young child. So when he got to the point that he was asking questions, we would be able to talk to him in a mode that he would understand about who we were, why our lives are the way it is, and how the life is in America today.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. I also want to kind of talk to Garrett really quick about, you said that you got to a point where you decided not to say anything. And it's interesting because I've been having some difficulties communicating my form of protest to certain people. And I kind of want you to talk about why you chose not to say anything at some point, because my personal opinion is that certain people are almost taking that option away from us, specifically us as Black men. Like, if you're not saying anything, like I know some people have gone after Oprah because she's not saying anything. And what I was basically saying is, if y'all are arguing for the right to protest through riots and looting, maybe my protest is creating forms like this, or literally just by being allowed to be silent. And I just want to know how you feel about that.
I don't know. I just couldn't. Going out to protest is it takes a great deal of energy and courage to get up that the energy, the gusto to get out there and do it. And I've also been concerned about whether I'm staying in New York City. So the coronavirus is still a thing, and I don't want to possibly infect myself and then go back to my parents or go stay with my sister or someone. So it was also like just a practicality thing. I also have another thing about just New York City in general, where I don't necessarily feel like this is my city.
Right, like at home, it feels different.
It feels different. Like when I went to the Ahmaud Arbery protests, like for his birthday down in Brunswick, I'm from Georgia, so it felt like somewhere I needed to be. But when it comes to protesting, I feel like everybody has their own ways. Like I feel myself as an artist, like my power is in my art. And while I have no problem going out to protest everyone, like I did the ICE march when they were protesting ICE when Trump started to give them more and more powers towards the beginnings of its policy in the city, because that felt like a national issue, and I was like, I need to be a part of it. But I think it's more so just taking accountability for myself, and also in this, this is hit at such a weird time, not only like in this century, but just like in the human experience, like when it comes to the internet and sharing opinions. And I also walk the balancing act as an actor and being on Instagram of like
Representing yourself.
Representing myself, but also just like, I feel like sometimes people are using the protests as like clout, in a sense. And I never want to be attached to that. I'd rather take my time, think about what I want to say, think about what I want to create, and then do that rather than just doing something to be doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I find that really annoying, which I feel like a lot of people are getting trapped into, because this is like the concept that people are trying to I guess like break down for people is so huge. Like to to be like, you have to think, you have to want to tear down the whole justice system, pretty much. Like, that's what people want, people to go from 0 to 100. And I've been working on my mind to wrap my mind around that for a while now. Like, incarceration, it needs to be a thing. Police officers, we never really had them until Black people got free. It doesn't really necessarily need to be a thing.
Say that.
But it takes a lot for someone who doesn't have my experience to take that in. And I feel like people want everything so quickly. People want everyone to agree with them right now. People want them to understand what it is right now. And that's hard. And people are gonna ask stuff of you. Like I got tagged in the daggone I'm a Black man thing. And I
tagged you.
You tagged me, but I got tagged in it yesterday, and I was like, do I want to do this, but I feel like I'm being forced to do this.
You know what? I want to say the guy who tagged, I didn't know it was a thing. The guy who tagged me in it was on the first part of this topics episode. He was on the first Toxic Masculinity forum. And during that forum, we spoke about how us as Black men, we don't congratulate each other enough. We hate on each other. And so when he sent me it, I didn't feel pressure. I thought that's why he sent it to me.
Yeah.
To kind of piggyback off of that. And I was like, yeah, I mean, but I hear what you're saying though. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily the pressure from the Black community. I just don't like those Facebook threads to begin with.
It's tough because I think part of this whole situation is like, you know, part of the reason that racism has become so ingrained in us and so systemic is because it's like a sheep mentality. Like everybody do this. And that's kind of what's wrong with the idea of telling everybody how to protest. Or saying to everyone, this is the only way to protest. Like my brother have discussed, he feels like, you know, change only happens after violence, which there's plenty of evidence that is true. But the word only is the issue I have, because there's also plenty of evidence that shows that peaceful protest has also happened. Look at
and there's so much work that has to be done. Like the battlefield is only one part of the war, you know? We have to be aware, like the people, and not everybody is meant to be a warrior. We need nurses, we need educators, we need communicators. We got to get the messages passed across. So I try and brush it off. It's hard too, because the Black community is very like.
Which is actually one of the topics we're gonna talk about later in more depth, because I just wanted to know about that, and I kind of want to talk to Justin again. I want to get your weigh in on, because I'm not sure what the demographic of the children you teach is, but just a weigh in on what are these conversations like? Are you having these conversations? Are you kind of like sheltering them from it? Or I mean, because you're not their parent, but a lot of times my teachers have had such an impact on the man who I was, and they're not my parent, but they felt like a parent in a sense. So I just kind of want to hear your thoughts on that, and anybody can chime in.
Yeah, and it's very interesting, because when looking at those types of interactions, you know, you're not there. You know, I don't work with them as a school faculty member, and I'm also not their parent or guardian. So and also I'm not in their age group. You know, I'm a few years older than them, and so they kind of have this somewhat casual approach with me, you know, because they're there for an extracurricular kind of thing. It's something that they have to sign up for. It's not required. They're not getting a grade. So the environment itself lends itself to be, you know, very open in a lot of different ways. That they've come up to ask me different questions about just random stuff about life. You know, it doesn't even have to be about school or college. It'll just be about, you know, some random something or other. But this especially has been a great opportunity. You know, unfortunately, we have the barrier of the pandemic happening, but on some of our Zoom calls, we have had some conversations that have just, you know, just kind of been not directly prompted, but just kind of checking in with them and seeing what's going on in their heads, and, you know, how do they feel about everything that's going on in the news? You know, what are their thoughts? What are their feelings? Because some of them might not know the grand history of you know, even just the Black Lives Matter movement, much less the complete depth of the civil rights movement, much less, you know, anything deeper than that. And they just have gut feelings about what's happening currently, and that's okay. They don't have to have the complete story. They can just have an emotion about it and then express that emotion in whatever shape or form. And I'm very lucky to have a very diverse group of kids that I teach, and they are so supportive of each other. It's a great culture that we've created and crafted over the past 5 years that I've been with this current program, and they know each other's struggle to some degree. They know the girl or the couple of girls in the group that need a ride when we're talking about doing extra stuff. They know the couple of girls that have never had to encounter a racist issue ever, or no, and they know that even though they might not have lived it in their shoes, they are still they are still a teammate, and they are still worth the time and energy of supporting their teammate in dealing with that hard moment, because we sweat together, we train together, we travel together, and they see each other more than they see some of their other family members. So it starts to be that kind of chosen family for them throughout the years. And you would be surprised, it's the, you know, the kind of acceptance and the kind of depth that they have for each other by the end of it. And it's, you know, one of the reasons why I do what I do and why I'm so passionate about doing it is because, you know, the arts hold a special place in my heart, because I got it from my father. My father was a band director and was my band director. And so now I have the opportunity to kind of pass that along to, you know, the marching band programs that I work with, the dance programs that I work with, to kind of pass down that love. But when they have these very adult emotions and reactions to seeing seeing people being pepper sprayed in the face, people being shot with rubber bullets, and they're not necessarily rubber bullets, they are less lethal rounds. And you see these people being maimed, blinded by these police officers who's they've been told that are there to serve and protect. And they are, you know, if you ever are in trouble, you find a police officer, and you find someone who looks like a police officer, and you go straight to them. Then contrast that with what they're seeing now, and it's very, I don't want to say damaging, but it is having an effect on their psyche and on their perception of authority. And whether that's just what they're seeing in the news now, or what they are going to interpret that to mean the next time that they come into a situation where they have some rules in place and they know they're supposed to be following them, but it might not even matter because I'm going to get treated XYZ regardless of if I'm following the rules or not. So it might not even be something as big as, breaking the law, but it certainly weighs on them when it comes to rules and regulations and any kind of structured activity or environment that they find themselves in. They've begun to realize that these kind of simple truths that they thought were, you know, the same for everybody are not. And they're very confused by that. They're very concerned by that.
That actually,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
that actually is something I kind of want to go into depth about. I guess I was gonna wait for this to come up later, but recently I've been considering the idea of being an ally, because I have a lot of friends that are either not Black or that are, want to help but feel like for some reason they can't. I'm trying to figure out how to best. I have some of my Black friends who feel like, it's not our job as Black people to educate white people.
You're gonna be an ally for allies?
And no, I mean, this, and it definitely goes deeper, because okay, my brother is not, well, he's not straight. I mean, he's not gay. So he basically, we were talking about Tony McDade, and the response broke my heart. The idea was, how are we asking for allies when we can't be an ally? because the only difference that I saw between what happened to Tony McDade and a lot of these other people is that, you know, I mean, there was no video, and
Right.
he's part of the LGBT community. And when I approached the subject to certain people, it was almost as if, well, that's not our fight. That's for LGBTQ people to deal with. And I'm like, but why?
Is he not black?
Yeah, he's black. No, but the issue is, everyone is relating all of this to racism. Yes, but it's also about human rights, excessive force, and tyranny is the word used. But I'm like, so why are those things why don't they count in this situation? And it kind of goes to what you were saying, Garrett, about how we sometimes feel like when it comes to black people feel like if you don't fit this idea, action, behavior, you're not black. And so I kind of want to talk, because as being gay and black, it is always this, like you're never quite there, but you're also not nowhere else. So I kind of want to talk, because I think everybody has a perspective on that, because even being white men, even being Julian, I want to say your actual ethnicity. What is it?
Colombian, Ecuadorian.
Okay. Even
South American.
Ecuadorian and being gay, I feel like we all straddle that line of being in certain situations where we have to remember that we're the gay one, or we're the black one, or we're the, you know? So I just kind of want to do like a spitfire on that and see how y'all are feeling about that.
Well, that's the key. One of the things you said, that as a black man, once you talk about your blackness and they see it on the outskirts, oh, you're black, so, oh yeah, you're part of the situation. But once you put in, I'm gay, it takes you away from the equivalent of everything that they're standing for, because it's just like with the black church. You're a part of it before they know you're gay. But once you say you're gay, you're no longer part of the black church. You're not part of this church. This is not the church you're part of, because we don't allow this, you're going to hell. All these things come out in the process. So you have to actually love yourself enough to know, look, I stand alone when it comes to certain things. I'm in a different group, and I have to stand alone. I can stand for this, but then I'm still fighting for me being a black man. And also, when I'm standing with them, I'm standing also for me being a gay man. But they just may not see the same thing. I have to then go with a different group in order for that to be a part of what the situation is.
It's crazy to me, because I asked you, Shelton, so when is the point where and not to take away from the issues that are happening, I'm not trying to do that at all. I'm trying to talk about different issues. So when's the point for us as gay men to tell our communities, hey, y'all need to stop rejecting us? Because I mean, for real though, because when is that conversation? Because it's true, because at the end of the day, a lot of gay black men spend so much time either hating themselves, gay men, hating themselves, or questioning their masculinity, because of that rejection. So when is it time for us to look at straight people and be like, okay, yeah, like there are still people getting murdered just because they're straight. I mean, gay, but just beyond that, when is it time for us to ask for not?
Unfortunately,
that time is now. It's all the time.
I think it's going to happen it's going to be a separate conversation.
Yeah, it can be right now, because of it would seem like you're taking away from one issue.
Correct.
Go ahead, Julian.
I was just gonna say it's just like I mean, it's the same thing with racism, and now we're talking about instead more like prejudice with like the LGBT community and stuff. Like it's very layered, you know. There's a lot of different systems and a lot of different things that we have to break down. So it's like talking about this in the male community, in the straight male community. Like, you know, you need to start accepting us as your peers, basically, because that's what we all are, you know. It still has to, again, we have to like I mean, it's gonna bring us full circle, but it, you know, it relates to toxic masculinity and like those and the ideas of gender norms and stuff like that, and we have to like really just break down all those different barriers. But there's so many layers, and there's kind of so many that it's like it's more of we should never really put the fight down, which is what we've done, you know. Like we've been kind of complacent and pretty silent since we got gay marriage, you know what I mean? It's like, and it was very much the spoon that they fed us to kind of keep us quiet, which worked. And it's like, no, but we should have never been quiet. We should have never stayed quiet, because there's still more to be done. You know, that was a great step, but you know, ride that high. You know, there's so many other layers and so many other things that we need to address. For example, like we're talking about Black Lives Matter now, and then you're talking about now like trans and LGBT rights, and like how that still relates back to the Black Lives Matter, because those are still Black lives, you know. It's like there's no reason why that movement shouldn't still claim those people, but people within that movement won't, because their regular social norms are now seeping into their actual activism, you know.
I think,
and like
also because they have to, in order for you to ask for ally but not want to acknowledge how you might have at some point been oppressive, it's hard for some people, because it's like, okay, well, I'm only oppressed because I'm a Black man and I've never oppressed anybody else.
It's really terrible. It's a really terrible thing for minorities that they forget that we can also be oppressive of other people, and especially because we ourselves are facing oppression. Like, you know, oppressed people, hurt people. You get me? So it's like we have to see that within ourselves at least. That's why we talk about how like a lot of POC communities, they still have racism within their own community, within their own quote unquote races, as we define race, which is it's a construct anyway. But you know what I mean? So it's like within each different race, there's still racism that thrives there, and that's unfortunately an influence which certain people won't claim, but that's an influence that they've kind of imposed on these people of color, that like now that they have to see within themselves in order to actually fix it, you know. And it's like there's just so many layers.
And I feel like when it comes to people, idea that it's that self-work and that self-awareness. I don't know if it's that people are afraid of it or
well, I would suppose so, because I feel like that's kind of like one of the issues we've had with white people up until recently. That like in this last movement, in this last push, they've actually started to raise their voices more, which is I will appreciate. It's a little sad that it took to have to choke somebody out and watch them die in front of you for 7 to 9 minutes for that to like really happen, but it's here, so we have to kind of take it where we can. And it's like it's nice.
Are we talking about white people?
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me. No, I'm just because like I feel like we've all been numb to seeing Black people choked out and killed in the street or killed on YouTube or Black Star by now.
I think people of color have been, but white people have not. They have been living in a bubble where they don't even, they're so unaware.
It's not that we've been living in a bubble. I will say it's not that we've been living in a bubble. It's that most white people don't tune in as much to that kind of stuff, or haven't tuned in as much as until recently, until like, you know.
Well, I don't know, because like these videos, for example, like we've been watching
it's
them
almost a choice. It really is.
For decades. You know? And yeah, we've been on the internet for decades, and we've been
I
watching them for decades.
And I think it's an age thing.
Go ahead, somebody.
I think it's an age situation that more of these people that are protesting and standing up are younger kids. These are younger white Americans that are standing up because after generation, they've not had the prejudice that is going on in the past. So their parents are not teaching that stuff over and over again. And some of them are teaching them, but they're not believing it. These kids
they have better access to information as well.
And they have,
you know what I mean?
they're not believing this. This is what we're going to stand by. And then they're standing up and they're standing out. Just like I was so proud of when they had that shield, and these white teenagers, it was like 20 or 30 of them standing, and the Black people were behind them. And they told the police, you will have to go through us before you get to them. I mean, yeah, it's a younger generation.
And I don't know. I mean, I feel like the younger generation is hip. They are hip to it.
They're definitely
they're woke.
Their hearts beat a little differently. But I feel like none of this would have happened
if it weren't for Corona.
I
agree.
Because everybody was sitting at home.
I agree.
Looking at their phones, and then people started blasting that videotape. They did not let it stop. They did not let that video. They did not let a mom's video stop.
I think they had time to critique it more. They had more time to critique the video and actually look at it in detail. Like, look at him. He's looking down at this guy. He knows what he's doing. And then the other one, they're telling him he can't breathe. The man's not breathing. And he's like, don't stand back. Just stand back. So I think they really decided something is wrong here.
Yeah.
Well, because let's be honest, there have been plenty of these videos. There have been plenty of these videos for the past several years. This has happened many times in complete and utter filmed detail. But people now are at home and they don't have anything better to do.
They don't have anything to do.
And
I
they're
think there's an
watching.
extra layer, though. I think an extra layer on all this is there's something that's happened that has made us look at this coronavirus and be like,
I'm angry.
Recognize something in each other that's the same now.
Yeah.
We recognize something. This situation has affected everybody in such a way where literally the mask and gloves, the point of that is to think about other people. And because of that, I think everything y'all are saying is right about the ideas of it's because we had so much exposure to it, but we're also in this really like vulnerable state of heartfulness towards other people.
I also think people are mad.
A part of that is part of that is the coronavirus, that we don't know where it came from and whence it was started. It's come back to the whole thing of that the government started this virus to spread out to take care of stuff.
Shelton, hold on, let me pause for a second. Your camera's messing up. Hold on, let me fix it.
The whole thing with the coronavirus and not knowing the origin and where it came from and how it was started, and really truly that everybody thinks part of it that the government started. So we're angry at the government. So when this came out and everybody already had their feelings and their hearts were open, that everybody's stuck inside and had to be in his side and say, okay, they're talking about a new change in the way the world is going to work. Well, they saw this video and they started really critiquing it. It made everybody angry more and more. And they're like, this is another thing with the government that's going on. We got to stop this somehow. We can't really do much about the coronavirus, but we can do something about this video.
Do something about that.
Yeah, and if I'll touch on that too, it's very much you're damned if you do, damned if you don't in this current environment when it comes to the government and any administration, because the coronavirus specifically, the amount of delay and inaction in the early months has caused it to be this much of an issue, this much death, this much infection. And then we've had to be closed for so long because of that, so that there's anger. And then we are trying to, some states and some municipalities are trying to reopen by, phasing in. And then that's making other people angry because they know as soon as one door gets open, that whole rush of people are going to just crowd through, and they're not going to follow any type of phased process. So you're going to get flack one way or the other, and they've been just cooped up, like we've been saying. It's been so much of, tension and anger and uncertainty when it comes to like finances and your job and what's the future going to hold. And my kids are driving me crazy because they're not at school, and here we are.
Yes, let's talk about these kids not going to school. Because I really felt I really felt.
I wanted to say one more thing on that. I think it's also like the massiveness of coronavirus in general, just like its ability to shut everything down, I think has helped me to, because I've always been into police reform, and I've been like trying to understand people talking about decarceration and like how that would like work, or is it decarceration, or like when you shut down the like whole system, like the whole like where the community takes care of policing pretty much in other ways.
You mean gangs?
Not gangs. I mean towns.
No, that's what it was in the beginning.
Oh no, yeah, there was like a night watch.
Night watches
but I think it's also that's opened up people's eyes, like, oh, you know what? That seemed so big. Like the judicial system seems so big, but like the federal government is so much bigger than that. So it's like, oh, if that can shut down, we can definitely figure out a way to like make this, if we don't shut it down, which we should, we can at least find a way to like chop it in half.
Well, I actually want to comment on that because I've never thought of that. Because of the country we live in, we have states laws and we have federal laws. If there are no federal laws requiring a state to have a police, that state could just decide, okay, we're not going to have police. Even furthermore, some cities have laws that apply in that city that don't apply in other cities within the same state.
Mm-hmm.
Even a city could decide, okay, we're not going to do this. Just like I heard today, the mayor of LA or somebody in LA has decided to take a certain amount of money from police force and put it towards high-risk communities. The thing about that kind of thinking is, and what's really difficult, and it goes back to the conversation before, I can't ask for allies if I'm going to be an oppressor. Like, the idea is for everybody to be self-aware enough to know when we're hurting and when we're not, right?
Right.
So the idea that anyone who works for the government is somehow not deserving because of the way the system is, they didn't make the system, they're just living in it. I think there's a balance we have to find somewhere between getting things better for oppressed people and also making sure that, because if we just ended all police everywhere in this country, you would have how many people without jobs?
And you can't do that. You can't do that.
Right.
But you can take their money away.
Or you can do something to place, because y'all saw the article about Norway, right?
What about it?
They basically,
they haven't killed anybody in like years.
10 years, the police there haven't killed anyone.
Gotcha.
Not one person. So it's possible to have a police, and somebody keeps bringing up this number. Oh, the police killed this many people who were white versus Hispanic versus black. And I'm like, y'all are showing that the black is highest. I was like, the issue is that the police killed 600
people.
Right.
Kill all these people.
Right.
And they got away with it.
Like, I'm
But
like,
then it goes
it's
back to
worse
the
that
way they were
I'm
framed.
higher. I'm more likely to get shot than maybe Chris, but
Yeah.
that's 400 people. But nobody they killed nobody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With my luck, it's probably not Duryea. I have terrible luck.
Stop, Chris. You gonna be the one?
Oh,
Well, I mean, it's not as if these things aren't possible. It's just that they want to pretend like they aren't. Because, like, let's talk about now. If you have to make these cuts, that means you have to make cuts to staffs, and then that means that you do have to leave some people without a job. But like, how do you prioritize that? Why not use the person who has 18 counts of misconduct in front of them that you've been afraid to let go because I won't have a police officer to replace him. Guess what? He doesn't need to be there. Like, you know what I mean? Like, start there. It's not as if these stations don't have these high risk employees that they can't be getting rid of. So it's, all these things are possible. They don't. It's the same thing as when we talk about healthcare and we talk about 1,000 things. Suddenly there's no money. But it's like, if we took some of that money out of all that warmongering we do, perhaps we would have so much motherfucking money.
So
But,
on the other foot, like, sometimes it's not even the police officer. Sometimes their current police officer. Sometimes it's an ex-police officer and his fucking son. Or,
and whatever they're making and things. But then there's
they get immunity too, or they get help because
treatment.
Yeah, and then
It's the way the system works.
Here we are. That, to be honest, if we're going to look at like who we need to get rid of whenever we cut these systems down, so we need to look at the people who are in the administrative part of it, because they are the ones who are obviously, like, especially we're talking about a corrupt administration and a corrupt system. That means who's running those systems? The administration. So then the administrative people are the people that you should be cutting first. Those are the people that you should be analyzing first. Those are the people you should be bringing to accountability first. And then you kind of move your way down the line from there.
yeah, you almost need to work from the top
do
down.
y'all think that,
Yeah.
do y'all think this is clearly it's a policy thing?
And like, here we are working from the bottom up, to be honest. You know what I mean? Like, we've made the most stink about the bottom man, which is deserving. But at the same time, who covered it up for him and who's continuing to? There's a reason why he got third-degree murder instead of first-degree, which was what was deserving here. There's a reason why the other three were they flew under the radar up until the past week. They're protecting them still. They're still trying to lessen their burden. And who's that coming from? The administration.
Do you
gotta go to the top.
Do you think this is something that is purely just okay, I sometimes I can't frame it as a question. I just can spit my thought out and have y'all respond to it. To me, like, when I think about all this, I feel like it is a human. It's not just the systems in place.
It's the human component that makes them so corrupt.
When I say that, what I mean is basically, because there's this post that I saw that says, once you get to a certain age, it's your responsibility to be responsible for, even if you learn bad behavior, it's a choice at a certain point. And it's your choice whether you change it or not. So having said that, you're a man or a woman or a person in the community, and you're realizing, hey, I'm really oppressive to women. Hey, I'm really oppressive to blacks. instead of giving an excuse as to why and then change it. So do you think that's just in as artists, because most of us here are artists, what is our role in, because I personally feel like we have a responsibility too. I'm not a lawmaker, I'm not a police, but I do have a responsibility to affect change. So what is our responsibility? Because I can always write this and that and third, but as a direct reacting to each person, what do y'all think our responsibility is?
Reflect it back.
What do you mean?
Just like show them what they're doing. I think I feel like
responsibility.
I'm just going off of what Nina Simone said already. It's just like reflect it back at them. You got to show people what they're doing and how their actions affect others. And whichever I have to show them the consequences of their actions, or how some opposing, usually I try and do some opposing point of view, but a lot of it is just reflecting, and then reflecting and letting them see the danger in what they do.
This actually, y'all heard about Leah Michelle, right? So
what happened?
Basically, I guess when all this stuff started going down, and I have no problems with any of these people, I'm just reporting what the news is saying. So basically, when all this stuff started going down, she came. Everybody knows who Leah Michelle is on the panel, right? She came out. I know, but I had to just make sure. She came out, and I guess there was a co-star from Glee that I didn't get to the second half of the show. She was one of the younger Black girls who came after Amber Riley was gone. So, and apparently she basically said, "Why you cared about me now that this is like a hot topic? But when I was on your show, you treated me like shit."
Yeah.
And treated me like in a really racist way. And then, Amber Riley came and she commented on it, basically saying, "Well, I don't think Leah Michelle's a racist. I just think she's an asshole to everybody." And she uses those things that she has, like, and I'm paraphrasing. She just used race to put that girl down, but for somebody else, it might have been that they weren't as talented, or that they hadn't.
She called Leah out.
Yeah, she might talk about like their weight or something.
Oh no,
I think she just goes below the belt. She's like a low blow kind of girl.
The younger Black girl called her out.
No, I'm talking about Amber Riley though.
Somebody was asking her about it, and she basically said, "This is the only time I'm going to talk about it, because it's not really something I like to do, because I'm not spiteful and petty." But she was like, "Yeah, it was tough being around her and working with her like that, but I don't think she's a racist. I can't say that, but I can say that, So that's my thing about it. Like, how do we? That's what I really meant by what is our job? What is our responsibility as an artist? Because we have these. Some of us might, just get on stage, on film, social media. We have these platforms. All of us really have somebody who's listening, has an ear to us, or at some point being a mentor or somebody. What is our responsibility as we navigate through all this? Because Leah Michelle in that situation doesn't realize that, because I haven't seen that girl in anything else. She might have scarred that girl. She very well could have. Because maybe before that girl got on that show, she thought Leah Michelle was like the hottest thing since sliced bread. You know what I'm saying? So what is our responsibilities? I guess what I'm asking.
I mean, I feel like, touching on that topic in particular, like, definitely as an artist, like an actor, because that's mainly what I am, your responsibility is to do your job and not to, like, belittle other people in the way of doing your job. There's no reason for that, and there's no reason not to be an advocate for everyone. There's no reason to deny someone a role because of their race. There's no reason to think that they're doing it any less good, or there's no reason to have any real opinion about another, like a person of another race doing a role. Like, I don't understand how people can even have that concept of mind, like, of putting people down, or like trying to feel like you're better than because of any particular racial quality. I am so for colorblind casting. I'm so for colorblind, like complete colorblind casting, like opposite.
So do you think it should be intentional?
I do. I mean, I would be willing to give up so many roles if it would give opportunities to other people in the community, because I feel like, you know, even in my community, Athens, Georgia is a pretty democratic, pretty liberal place to be in Georgia. It's like one of the only blue places that you can be in Georgia. And still, you know, the Black representation that we have on the local stages is minimal. And we do try to, I mean, like in the last show that I was in, Jekyll and Hyde, we had several people, you know, cast, you know, as Black in a traditionally all white show. No one blinked an eye. No, that, I mean, that didn't like raise any flags, but I think there should be more of that, and more like, you know, pushing the boundaries of, you know, like, this person definitely should be white. No, this person can be any color.
Okay, I don't want to ask you a question based off of that.
Go ahead.
So do you think that's realistic, considering if we were to go colorblind, we would kind of technically have to go all across the board colorblind, but there's certain ways that could never work. Like,
I don't think a raisin in the sun could be colorblind.
Well, no, but even fictional stuff, like if Storm wasn't Black, which she could be because there's Africans that aren't Black, but if Storm wasn't Black, that might be another riot for your ass. So
I just don't think we can be exclusionary.
But so that's the thing about it. Like, so going both ways, it's like, okay, because I personally feel like Black artists need to stop doing all Black work, because in a sense, we pigeonhole ourselves by doing that. We make it clear that, and sometimes there's a lot of Black people out there who say, well, I don't want to work with people who oppress us, and that's fair. But, you know, I feel like it's got to be a reaching across the aisle and reaching back. And I get the idea that, like, sometimes you don't feel like reaching across all the time and getting your hands swatted. You know what I mean? So what do y'all think about that?
So I don't know if anybody has seen it yet. Some of you probably have. On Netflix, there's a series called Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
Touches on
Seen
exactly this. Yeah.
I can barely hear you, Justin.
Oh, you can't hear me?
Like this much. Can everybody else hear him well?
I can hear it. It's a little dim.
It's a little muted, yeah.
I'm sorry.
I know, right?
Oh. Bye.
We scared him off.
Okay, well, somebody else want to chime in until he comes back?
Uh,
He's back as soon as I said it.
Hey,
Okay, I have my earphones in.
there he is.
That's better. Yeah, much better.
Oh God, I needed my Britney mic. Okay. It's called Hollywood, and it touches on exactly this. Actually, it is set in 1950s Hollywood, and it is about it's very diverse. It is about a Black writer who writes a white script, or a script for a white role, in an effort to show that he can write whatever, to get his foot in the door, to then be able to write Black roles for major motion picture studios. Through the series of events that happens, they go through the casting process, and the company actors at this studio, there's a very small talent pool for this specific kind of role, and it's this one white girl, and she's terrible for it. But then there's this Black actress, and she's 10 times better than the white girl. But it's 1950s, and there's no way that we can put a Black actress in a leading role. It's never been done before, you know. So I think that's really interesting. And throughout the series, they realized that, well, this script was written for a white actress, for a white role. If she is Black and she's in this role, then some of the qualifiers for the storyline don't make sense, you know. So it was recrafted and reshaped in such a way that it made more sense for a colored for a Black actress to play that, and it brought more depth to the story. So I think that's a really interesting series, especially in regards to this specifically. As the main story arc, but then throughout the series as well. I mean, it has gay undertones to it as well. It has lesbian undertones to it as well. Storylines that are weaved throughout. You know, as progressive as we like to think Hollywood is a lot of times, it showcases that, well, they're making pictures for the entire country and for the entire world. So they themselves are restricted and limited sometimes by the sellability, by the bottom line dollar when it comes to some of these types of productions.
I personally feel like there's a balance of those two things, though. Like, I feel like you can definitely still make the money, but also enrich the community. So I kind of want to take that as an opportunity to kind of delve into our main topic for tonight. The main topic tonight is going to be toxic masculinity. This is the part 2 of the video. And I kind of want to delve into it specifically on how it affects us as members of the LGBTQ community. Now, everyone here is, I don't know how everyone identifies. We don't have a female, but that's not to say that this is not an issue that they don't deal with, because there's a lot of women who definitely deal with toxic masculinity as in their traits and dealing with the traits of others. So I just want to preface with that. Kind of want to start just by saying, kind of similar to the last video, Julie, you'll know. So, you know, they're bringing X-Men to the MCU. And when we're talking about inclusivity and stuff like that and everything you just said, it makes me think about Bobby Drake, who is Iceman. And he's basically the first X-Men who's officially now, in the old movies, he was never played as a homosexual. In the comic books, he's gay.
Originally?
Yes.
But not originally. I think it's more of a new
Like
storyline where
Right,
that makes him gay. Yeah.
I think it's beautiful because
Yeah.
it's a choice. You know what I'm saying? It was a choice to be like, we need this inclusivity out here. Now, the question I have is, because I think when it comes to gay and being put on entertainment screens, I feel like they don't want to really show gay men on TV as much as they don't mind showing gay women on TV. Like Once Upon a Time had Mulan and Rapunzel, and they were like kind of in love with each other. But the idea that an MCU would have a male gay character, I feel like is a little bit more of a stretch. And I feel like that has to do with our ideals behind femininity, masculinity, and how can because Bobby Drake's not necessarily a feminine character. So how could you have that character and his partner who's also not feminine? How are we going to show them on screen and everything? So how do y'all feel about that?
Well, I know Deadpool's not like in the official MCU, but wasn't Deadpool like bi? Weren't they kind of working
Deadpool's
after
bi.
this?
But they hinted toward
Like
it. They kind of hinted toward it in this one. Only time I remember them talking about it is there was one scene, and I only saw the first one, where the girl was like using a strap on him. And yeah, I know,
Yeah, I feel like Deadpool's a stretch. I feel like Deadpool would like not to like be like a bestiality or but I feel like he would do anything. Deadpool, that character.
Well, this was before he was Deadpool for one, but I mean, yeah, that's why that was the first R-rated superhero movie. And so, you know, but they didn't go like full tilt in the direction of his like. You know what I mean?
They just alluded to the fact that he's bi, kind of a thing.
And that's a barely an illusion. Illusion is that a word? That's
it's more. It was like more of a demonstration.
Right. And so I feel like I don't know, and I guess maybe I'm in my feelings today because of the conversation that I had before. But I really feel like so out of touch with everybody else sometimes when I felt like I was so part of this movement. 2 days ago, felt like I was part of this like positive change. And then after that conversation, I was like, no, you're not. This isn't for you because you're gay black. You're not black. So, and then these ideas that exist, and even in that, like that was a choice made to make that character that way. Even in Deadpool, he can be like that on the page, but when we go to a bigger audience, he can't be like that.
That's because of society. Society portrays what they want to look at. They're fine with saying two women. That's every straight man fantasy.
Exactly.
But when they see two,
which is why that's always been okay.
That's going to be a problem. That's gross. And, you know, you get those whole things of two men. Brokeback Mountain is a good one for you. You know,
which was a good movie. I almost cried at the end.
I love the movie. You know,
oh my God!
I did cry.
I know, right? I did cry.
That was the hard part.
But I mean, if you're gonna get two gay men to play in one of the biggest or first like big gay movies like in a long time, you're gonna get Jake Gyllenhaal and Heath Ledger because they're gorgeous.
And people can wrap their heads around that.
But see, I
Right.
applaud them for doing the role and doing it, in my opinion, justice. Like, they didn't play to any stereotypes. They just played two men in love.
Yeah, they did. I thought it was a beautiful kind of take on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the only reason, and not the only reason, but the only way you could probably have it be that successful was playing it very, very hetero. Like, oh, there's no other storylines going
There's
on.
a reason why Moonlight got all the accolades it got. 'Cause
Yeah.
to be honest, I thought that the story, like even the love story, was just so underwhelming. It was so underdeveloped.
Underdeveloped.
It was so underdeveloped.
I
And
didn't
then I was
see
like,
it.
oh, but he like loves him in the end or whatever. But
I know.
it's supposed to be very Brokeback Mountain, except think the ghetto though. You know what I mean?
Why
But
is
like
that
they're in the hood.
ghetto?
Not the ghetto, but they're in the hood. They're in the hood. He's a hood rat.
But they were.
He was a hood rat. I cannot.
There's no going around that. It's fine. It's all right. You know what I mean?
They got close to it at the ocean.
I've been with the hood rat for years. I know
I
what
don't
a
even-
hood rat looks like.
I don't know if that story was supposed to be a love story. I think it was just supposed to be
That's my
about
point. It
Sharon.
was so underdeveloped, and it was just like, the point wasn't the love story, but there was a love story in
But there
there.
was a love story.
But it
You
was
have to
so
read it.
underdeveloped and everything. It's like, what are we making here? What
It's
exactly?
like,
what
Did he
happened
love
here?
him?
tiptoeing around. It's like tiptoeing around the idea of what gay male
Right.
relationships are like, and it
But
can
it
only be
won.
digested. Yeah, it can
What,
only be
Emmys?
digested by a larger audience by pulling back that far
Right.
on the subject matter.
I think they didn't really do it that much justice as far as like the gay Black community is concerned, because I appreciate hearing all of you guys' stories about how you've like felt lesser than in your own community because you're gay. Like I don't know, like maybe my experience is a little bit different. I've definitely been discriminated against within the white community because I'm gay, but I mean, I always feel like more it's like, oh, he's just sweet, you know, he's just like that, you know, he's just a confirmed bachelor, he's fine. But like never like felt less white or felt like less, I guess, accepted by my whole community because of the way I am.
Sorry, go ahead. Keep going.
No, go.
Somebody asked me once in one of my when I was locked up, and she was trans, and she didn't ask me. I told her, I was like, hey, you know, I identify as gay before I identify as Black. And she goes, what? And I said, yeah. And she's like, why? I was like, because that's a thing that we have to think about, because I feel like less shunned by gay people. I don't really feel shunned by gay people. I mean, there's some queens out there who are kind of spiteful, but you know what I'm saying? But for the most part, I don't feel like I don't get pushed to the side as much by gay people as I do by Black people. Like people, when I came back from overseas when I was younger, they didn't ask me to hang out. They didn't ask me to go to the parties. They didn't ask me to go to the game. They didn't really, and I tried to engage, and I was always either called like an F-bomb or lame. You know what I'm saying? So, and I never really got that from gay people. So, I mean, am I the only person who has that experience?
Yeah.
I'm talking to Shelton and Garrett kind of sort of too.
Well, you know, I grew up, well, I didn't have that problem. I just know there's a difference. I know whenever you bring up that you're gay in a Black community, there is some type of shun that happens. And unless they are more open-minded, you can feel some of the acceptance, but you're going to still feel a little difference in what you, on how you interact with them. But other than that, I mean, I still feel a part of the Black community.
I'm not saying that I don't feel a part of the community. It's more that I feel like I'm a gay Black man. I don't feel like a Black man who's gay.
Yeah, you feel like the community still kind of sectioned you out, which it kind of does.
But it does.
But doesn't. But I feel like that's every community kind of, like, they all have like that bit of machismo, that is what we call it for the Latin community. You know, they all have that. It's technically, as we're coming back full circle again, it's that toxic masculinity that kind of, that's pervasive in all different cultures and like different communities. So it manifests in different ways, and it like how you get it just depends on where the other person falls on that scale. You know, like for example, if
where it is. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
oh sorry, I was gonna say like lower income communities with like for like the barrios and stuff, like they're a little bit more LGBT unfriendly, you know, versus the probably the richer communities that are, you know, they're more about the air of inclusion, so they seem more including at least, you know. So it's like
Whether or
it's a
not
little
it's true.
exactly, even whether it's true or not is entirely different, but at least they're going to pretend like that's what they're doing. So it's like, you know, it really depends on where the other person falls on the scale of their own prejudices versus like, and that kind of determines what you're going to experience and how you're going to experience it and where, you know, and like how you know you develop after that. For example, like I'd say I was with the hood rap for a little while. Yeah, he's kind of from a more hood area, so his queer presenting always had to be a little bit
Good.
more hood. Yeah, it had to be a little bit more
Exactly.
masculine.
Less presented.
I know.
Less presented. Exactly.
Well, and
Exactly.
honestly, to be
So, you
honest,
know, it's just, you know, it changes how people develop and stuff. It kind of determines that for you.
I was gonna say, I feel like it's like we started the night off talking about just like white supremacy because Black Lives Matter, and I feel like toxic masculinity is also tied into that because colonization, you know, everybody had to learn what it was to be a white man to be accepted. So if you don't fit into that,
yes,
you're not like you just don't do it. And I mean, Black people have also adopted that, like living in America, because that's what we were taught.
Right.
So it's like if you aren't striving to reach white man, quote unquote, they want nothing to do with you. So I've had to do, like, I don't know, I do my own work. I'm trying to concentrate on myself and try and make myself happy.
Well, it's kind of funny though, because
go ahead. And just let people know.
Oh, go ahead. No. Yeah, I was gonna say I sometimes wonder, because as I'm piggybacking off of what you were just saying about how like striving to be a white man and things. I wonder how much that those cultures and those systems aren't kind of and influenced at least by even some of our own like traditional cultures and things. So like tribes, for example, you know, your gender roles were very specific there as well. You know, it's not as if that's something that only came with white people. You know, that's something that we've been espousing for a long time. But the respect between those different roles was entirely different. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's kind of what we unfortunately learned from certain cultures that, you know, that just have, you know, from the toxic masculinity and that strive for dominance that really it kind of boils down to. But like, yeah.
In response to the toxic masculinity thing, it's interesting because I really do. We there's studies on it, and it came up in the last conversation about how white supremacy is tied to toxic masculinity. But I think toxic masculinity is also it's this idea of what this convention of this is what it is to be masculine and feminine and have these traits and that traits. And if you are, you have to be masculine. And if you're a woman, you have to be feminine. And which is why toxic femininity is a thing too. But I think
well,
I think that they still kind of contribute to toxic masculinity, because toxic femininity is kind of like the proliferation, like making it easy, like making it
the enabler
of toxic masculinity. You know
like,
what I mean?
The idea is that a woman who doesn't have children is not a woman.
Right.
So
that's
that idea is part of toxic. It's just not. It's because when you think toxic masculinity, it generally has to deal with aggression and anger and all that stuff. And when you think feminine, you're like, well, how can feminine? It's more like if you're not this idea and my understanding of it. Sorry, if you don't fit this ideal and this structure, then you can't claim your masculinity.
Okay. Well, with it being a female masculinity, you have it more of being soft and more in touch with your emotions. You're more in touch with your emotions and the way you feel.
Is that a feminine thing, Shelton?
That's a feminine thing.
You think that is, or you think that's how it's perceived?
No, that's how it's perceived.
Okay.
Now, because you know, I could walk into a room and they be like, "Oh, I never knew you were gay," but then if I started talking some of my mannerisms, then okay, he's gay. I can tell by the way he said that, or I can tell the way he snapped his finger or whatever.
Right.
So those things go into those stereotypes. And so, like, oh, I didn't think you were gay. Well, what was gay supposed to act like?
Right.
What
does that matter right now?
And then they'll go into, oh, you know, like sissy, feminine, and all that. I'm like, well, that's not how everyone is built to act. I mean, you have your perception of what you think it is, but that's not how it is. I mean, like with me and my husband, one of the things that we found out is we really just want to be men and have a happy life as men and be able to love each other. So that's how we perceive our life, and that's how we live it, just to be happy with each other.
But I guess for me, I think that the idea of like what a man is supposed to be, which is how we started the last episode, is part of what leads to that toxic masculinity. Is like, where's it coming from? And I'm going to use an example. I saw Roots, the newer Roots, and in that, it was actually really, I thought it was great. Only reason I thought it was so good was because it was shorter than the original one, but it was much more historically accurate.
Okay.
So when they were in Africa, Kunta Kinte was basically a prince, and they were riding horses with spears. He got trapped into bondage by his rival tribe. He went too far away from the village. The rival tribe saw him, captured him, and sold him to the white man. And I mean, and that's generally how a lot of that stuff actually happened. But the reason I bring up that is because he went out into the woods and did this manhood
ritual,
these tasks and these rituals to become a man. Then when he came back to the house, his mother had to bow to him. And she couldn't look at him when she was handing him stuff because now he was a man, you know? And that was pre-colonization that tribe had those type of, and I think it's like that in a lot of, it's like that in Chinese cultures, because maybe not Chinese cultures, but Japanese.
No, yeah, there's like obedience is like a big.
You're a woman, be obedient, and that even goes back further into religion.
Yeah.
And the whole idea that Eve was supposed to be submissive to Adam and all those kind of things. So I think the ideas of toxic masculinity has infiltrated it into really everything that we do. And there's a lot of people who don't think it's a thing. They don't.
That's always dangerous in its own way, but you know.
Why?
Well, because it's the same thing as like when we talk about being not willfully ignorant of racism. You know what I mean?
Right.
Those people are going to probably if they're not believing, they are in small ways at least contributing to it, which is just going to perpetuate it more. You know, they're going to be laying small seeds in somebody who they shouldn't be laying those seeds in, and that person's going to grow differently with it. You know, it's not fair. It's not right. But
I would like to talk about something that might be just a bit off topic. I mean, it's still on topic, but like maybe just like a little bit different way of thinking about it, because this is where my mind kept going when kind of just like thinking about this whole topic. And like, you know, when I started thinking about toxic masculinity and when it was like, when I first started noticing toxic masculinity and, you know, what might have contributed to it, and like kind of the rampant, especially the modern kind of version within our own community, that, you know, the mask for mask, no fats, no thems, you know, like that kind of toxic masculinity. And you know, where my mind kind of went, and you know, you guys feel free to chime in, because I, you know, was just kind of spitballing here, but I started thinking, well, when did I start seeing most of that kind of stuff? About the same time smartphones came out, and smartphone, like I'm not kidding, and really what kind of sparked it was like thinking about pornography and the fact that more people, and let's be honest, pornography is rampant with toxic masculinity everywhere. I mean, you can't escape it. And now, and especially within the last like 10 years, more people are watching more porn more often, and the more you see something, the more okay it becomes. And the more you feel like it's okay to express that kind of opinion yourself, or allow that to happen. I mean, someone else speak, but that was literally where.
No, I hear you.
No, I hear you. I can see you struggling to like say it PC because you looking for the right words.
But you're right though. I think you're very right about. I never thought about those connections to it, because the idea that that's because I think that's where a lot of us end up getting our influences, whether it's from the media or pornography when we're talking about that kind of stuff. And then this idea that like, oh, if that's what desirable is, then what am I?
Exactly. And it just like perpetuates, it like self-feeds, because everybody watches porn. Everybody watches porn. And like,
They don't, but they lying.
Wait a minute now.
God will strike you down, the light, and I see it. All right, no, but like, and what we allow ourselves to watch can definitely influence us. I mean, like some of the things that, I mean, I myself have watched, I would never do in real life, but the fact that I've watched it several times, I may not see it as that wrong anymore, you know, because I've conditioned myself and I've seen it enough to where it may become okay. And that's where I think some people have become susceptible, or may have become susceptible. It's like, you know, we live in a society where literally everyone has a porn portal in their pocket. Everyone. I'm not joking. You can watch it basically anywhere, anytime you want.
But I don't, the only thing I say with that is that I don't know so much that porn, well, I think it helps contribute, and then it's more of something that you do as a result of what you feel. So in that, and in that light, it depends on like what, you know, what you feel is kind of how you're conditioned to be. So for example, like we're talking about like people who like kind of fetishize different races, but they probably develop that fetish because they're only ever around one race, you know what I mean? So then like the other race, it becomes exotic, and it's like it's a whole different thing. And so like, you know, that porn kind of it helps resonate with that and make that, you know, amplify that. But I don't think it's necessarily a cause. I think it's more, you know, something that's just already kind of ingrained in them through experience and through like social norms and all those other things, because porn is something that we seek out versus something that kind of finds its way to us.
Doesn't
you
mean
know,
there
so
couldn't be some minor reform in the way
definitely
people are portrayed in porn.
You definitely don't, and I can't say this is everywhere because I haven't like done a ton of research into this specifically, but you don't really see like naturally effeminate dudes all over porn. They're generally either straight for pay or like, and I'd never, literally until he said that 5 minutes ago, I never made that connection in my head, like, you never see those type of dudes. And if you do, it's like,
you know what I find funny as I think about that though is like you don't really see them, but you hear them. They come out at random, you know, they come out at like random times. You're like, oh, there she is.
That's a read.
You're like, oh, there she is.
That is
her in up until just
now. There she is.
So I think they're technically always there.
But that's a whole nother thing.
We just
like,
look over it.
That's toxic. Like go ahead. Where are you going?
I'm saying, even in that moment, it's kind of like we were talking about the last episode. Like, if a dude gets to a point in his sexual like experience where he releases and those sounds come out of him, right? He should be allowed.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? But the reason we even just as a light shade kind of can say that is because of toxic masculinity. You know what I'm saying?
I think that's one of the problems that we have as people is that we, you know, as we tried to categorize everything, there's this scale, I'd say, of like, you know, masculinity and then femininity. Mm-hmm. And then like, you know, there's fluid people who kind of move throughout it and things like that. And how you present yourself, like we now have all these different categories. I personally not sure where I fall because I haven't like looked them all up kind of a thing. But you know, you have like pen, you know, there's like 1,000 things now. You know what I mean? So there are ways at least to try and categorize ourselves. But I think that inherently, whenever you try to categorize anything, that's where not inherently, but that's where we have this pitfall where we can become more egocentric depending on where we fall. That's where like toxic masculinity is where it is. It's because the epitome of masculinity, that's what we're all going to strive for, and anything less than that is less than that. But no, it's technically not. It's just wherever you fall, you know, but we put it on this pedestal, and that's the one that we're all kind of striving for. And that's really what we need to break down is that pedestal, and that pedestal doesn't matter, that it's not real, you know, that you can fall wherever, and that's kind of where you belong.
So, do you think most people get their, I guess, their sense of what a man is, or the masculinity of a man, from their fathers, their uncles, the church? By seeing those people, you learn their behaviors and what they say. They tell you that this is what masculinity should look like, or
Well,
what a man should be from your
that's our
fathers.
problem.
Yeah,
That's the problem, is that
Yeah.
we have a set standard that we keep, and it should be more of like, this is an option, but where you fall is where you fall. And that's really, like, that's something that you have to nurture in your child as they're growing, because that's where they reveal themselves to you. That's, to be honest, it's a failing of parents. I think parents that didn't get that when they were growing up, unfortunately. They didn't break
I'm
those
just thinking about,
norms.
even when I grew up. I mean, I idolized my father. He ran nightclubs, so when I was in high school, I ran the nightclubs with my father. So he owned them. So he was doing his thing, and I still messing with other women. Now he's married, and I'm still running the club while he's messing around with women. So, I mean, you see these looks of what you call supposed to be, oh, this is the masculine man, this is what you're supposed to do. But inside yourself, that's not who you are. So, and then when you do reveal that to your father, and they reject you in a certain type of way, and then they tell you, no, look, I'm going to teach you how to be a man. This is how a man should be. This is how a man should act. But you don't perceive those things the way he perceives them. So it breaks down your barrier with your father. And it breaks down the way that you communicate with your uncles. It breaks down the barriers, the way you deal with the church. Because even in the church, if you let them know that you're gay or whatever, their perception, oh, we can wash that demon away, or cast that demon away, and teach you how to be a man. So I think it's a lot of different things that we have to look at when it comes to the toxic masculinity that we're teaching our kids, and as they see it in us and the way we act and how they portray it.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback off of that for Shelton, because I've had this in the back of my head for the past few minutes, that we developed that framework, we developed that point of reference for a man or a masculine trait when we are very young. And if only within the past, I don't know, handful of years, gay men and same-sex couples have only been able to truly adopt from multiple different kinds of agencies, um, in the US, much less worldwide. You have so few kids that are raised in same-sex households, um, to actually see that, to that be their reference point, that, okay, well, daddy A is like this, but daddy B is like this. There's different kinds of masculinity going on here. Same thing with mommy. Mommy A is like this, mommy B is like that. Okay, so there's different kinds of femininity. So you develop a spectrum from a very young age, because you are daily getting this type of like different facet of your parental units. And then when you then are exposed to the school and preschool and school years and things like that, then you start to develop that slightly wider spectrum of what other adults are like, knowing nothing really about their sexual orientation or their gender identity, but you kind of see, okay, this is Miss Teacher whoever, and she kind of operates in this zone, and this is Mr. Coach whoever, and he kind of operates in this zone. So it develops that framework from a very young age. And for at least the future, I see a lot of promising developing happening, because like we said, social media is so pervasive that they have that exposure to these different types of masculine and or feminine men, and masculine and or feminine women, from a very young age. So they start to understand that everything isn't a one or a zero. It's much wider than that. And it's a boon to me, at least on my day to day, when I go to when I'm going to teach the kids and I'm walking through the halls or I'm taking them wherever. I hear a lot, and I have some guys with me that are on my dance team, and I hear still the occasional giggle over here and the whatever over there. But I hear a lot less of that now compared to when I was in high school and when I was in elementary, middle school. It was rough, but that was me, small town Alabama, and I'm teaching in middle class Georgia right now. So there are some differences there, but at least as far as the development and the exposure metrics that the next generation kind of has, it's promising because they see it and they're exposed to it, and
Yeah.
that's good.
Your point on family, I think, like you were saying, the dynamics of family are changing now. They've been so male female 2.5 kids for so long, and fathers were given the ability to say or do whatever they want with no consequences because they were the breadwinners, and it helped the family at that time. And now, like, I think we're having so much talk and friction about toxic masculinity because the families are changing and being allowed to evolve in different ways. And though the men who thought that they would be getting married aren't getting married because they're assholes, and women want like a dude that is chill, and this guy still has this like thought in his head like, oh, I'm right, you're just going to listen to me because that's the way it's supposed to work. I think that's where most of our friction with with my friction with men comes in. They just assume that we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt, and that's no longer the case.
You know what? I'm so looking forward to something because I'm in kind of a super unique living situation. Right now, I live with my fiance, but also with my sister and her husband and my nephew. And since my nephew was born, we've been living here. I don't know if you remember, Duryea, my sister and I are super close. We're like best friends. So like, us living together was kind of a natural progression. Yeah. Well, anyways, and so we're a 5-person household with a straight couple, a gay couple, and a baby. And like I said, since the baby has been born, we've been living in the household. And Thomas is his nanny. Thomas is his live-in like nanny. So he's exposed to both sides, but in like an equal way, like showing that both are beautiful, both are great. Like he sees me kiss Thomas before I leave for work every day. He gives me a kiss before I go to work every day, obviously. He sees his mom and dad, kiss each other before they, and so like, and he's gonna get to grow up and see something that not a lot of kids get to see. And that's like, even if you have like gay uncles, like you don't necessarily live with them, you're not exposed to them like that often. Like, right. And this is more of a like in your face, like, no, this is an alternative lifestyle that you could also choose, or if any of your friends chose it, this is a normal way of living. And so it won't ever be for him anything abnormal or anything out of the ordinary. Like he is already going to know and love the fact that his uncles are gay before he even like knows the concept. I mean, like I can't wait. I can't wait till he's a teenager. I can't wait. He better not fucking be an asshole. Like if he's an asshole, I will kick his ass. Like we've already talked about, like you're not allowed. You're not allowed to be anything other than the sweetest.
But then let me ask y'all, how have your experiences been dealing with it from other members of our community, the LGBTQ community? How have those experiences either not, you haven't experienced, you have?
I think it really depends on where you fall on that spectrum, and then how, again, like, it's how they're going to react to you. So it really depends on where you fall. So for example, if I'm talking about, we're talking about the way I look right now, it's all right. If I let down my hair, it's probably a whole different experience with that toxic masculinity. Right now they're going to look at me and think something different. If I let it down, they're going to think something entirely different of me, and then it becomes lesser than, and then it kind of comes full circle to that.
So can I ask you a question?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, you may not have a profile right now, but if you had like an online application profile, would you put your hair down or would you keep it up?
I would probably not show it at all until
Really?
I
Well,
would feel the question of like, I have long hair, is that all right? You know what I mean? Like, because then is this going to be a problem for you? Because if it is, honestly, I'm not really for it.
have you found
But if
that
it is,
people don't like that?
yeah, then that's my point. That's, you know, it really depends on what you're presenting them and then what they're going to see. Because then you know, even we talk about toxic masculinity now, but then really the problem is just the problems that we have within our community that come out in dating. And with apps giving so much anonymity, it allows people to be bolder in their prejudices. So like we talk about, you know, masculinity now, but we could throw colorism in there, where I'm sorry if you're passing, that white man who's got a profile that says no blacks, they're gonna still hit you up and then not even realize it until you're like, oh, I'm actually half black or something like that. Then they're like, oh, but you don't look it, so it's okay.
That's fine.
You know?
Oh,
So
another thing.
that's a whole different story, but
That's never happened to me, but that's
it falls along the same lines. I've seen it firsthand, so it's like, you know, it kind of all falls along the same lines. It really depends on what you're presenting them and what you can dupe them with, because that's the funny thing about toxic masculinity is it's so stupid. Like, and
really
to
stupid.
prescribe to it is to be stupid, is to like literally be like an oath. Like it's like what? It makes no fucking sense.
Julie, what's the line between, because you know, I've heard some dudes say, and I can't say I necessarily agree with it, but maybe I get it, that it's not prejudice for masculine, femininity, colorism. It's a preference.
No, it's prejudice. It's veiled under preference because they don't want to they don't want to be called a racist or any of those things. That's really.
Do you think a person has to be sexually attracted to someone?
You don't have to be, but to be exclusionary to the point I'm sorry, there's billions of people in the world. How dare you say that not a single one of them will ever be attractive to you? You would never know. You will never meet all of them. There's no way to say that. Like, how dare you say that? You're using a benchmark of prejudice in order to make that claim and then adhere to that preference. You know what I mean? Like, and a preference is fine because, you know what I mean? You don't have to be attracted to something that you're not attracted to, but it's the way that you present that. If you are going to be exclusionary and say no fats, no femmes, no blacks, no Asians, now you're being prejudiced. You're being specifically exclusionary, you know,
Exactly.
instead of just saying that, oh, this, you know, instead of like the Asian hitting you up and maybe that's just not your type. That's not your type of Asian because you haven't found the right one yet. It's like it's like reading a book. Everyone has a book. They just need to fucking find. You know,
you could just say no, thank you. Like, but you don't have to
say
like,
no, thank you.
put
Exactly.
that on
You
your
don't have
profile.
to exactly as if like stay away. How dare you come? How dare you think you can communicate with me and try and you know what I mean? How dare you try and flirt with me? How dare you try and think that you can step to me? Like that's what that says. That's the message that sends when you put that in a profile. No, man.
My experience with toxic masculinity has almost been like I've almost like benefited from it for some stupid reason. Like before I lost all my hair and grew a beard, like I didn't get any attention. All of a sudden I'm bald with a beard and I'm daddy.
Yeah.
I'm not even joking. I am daddy.
It's funny.
Had so many people like stop me at Pride just to talk to me or like, you know, like hit me up on this, that, or the other because they saw my profile and like never before. Like, I mean, I was basically a ghost. Like could not get anything. So it's been a weird experience for me personally. And then, you know, people talk to me in person, they're like, oh wait, you're not daddy. You're not daddy.
Yeah, I think I don't know. My profiles, I'm an actor, so I'm used to rejection. So I'm usually just like, okay, next. And I mean, I'm masculine. So I have my own toxic mask traits. Sometimes I can be a little selfish. I can, but I feel like a lot of the times in my profiles, I'm just like, I'm usually fucking with toxic masculinity. I'm like, I need guys who smile, who aren't afraid to smile. Right. I need guys who are willing to walk outside the way they want to walk outside. Yeah. And it's also different on Jack because you got guys just trying to be thugs.
Right, because
trying
when
to
you're black,
present.
they expect you to be a thug. They expect you to
Yeah,
be a thug.
yeah.
Well, yeah.
Okay, can I ask, what is Jack?
Oh, it's like Black Grinder.
It's like Black Grinder.
Is that what it's become, or is that what it always was?
Huh?
I think,
It's
but
always
I
been
like
that.
there's plenty of white people out
It's always
there.
been that way.
I think it
There's
just depends on the area you're from.
But it's pretty much, yeah. Like you gotta have, if you like, the thing about it is, the crazy thing about it is, if you like the rainbow, you can't have just one dating app. No, sir. No, you have to have at least 3.
No,
Unless you want,
yeah,
like,
it's segregated.
there are some apps, but I mean, that's the interesting thing about it. That's a whole nother conversation.
That is a whole nother.
So
Does that have to do with toxic masculinity?
I think so.
Well, this does a little bit, because now if we talk about it, Grinder is like a cesspool for mask guys, versus if you're looking for something more or different, you usually go somewhere else. You know, either that or you sift through the shit that they give you. But like, it's probably more mask on there than anything else. So if you're looking for something that's going to be a little different, you're going to get a different app. You know?
You're going to go to Hornet. You're going to go to Growler. You're going to go to whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that's because it is the most mainstream out of all of them. It's the most well known. It's been around probably the longest. So it has a very high number of users. So in some ways that kind of lends itself to being, you know, a snapshot of what the LGBT community, you know, deals with on the regular basis. It's now just copy pasted over into the app. And that's gay men thinking that they need to look a certain way, act a certain way, interact a certain way, and it's
fit in.
So pervasive. Yeah.
And like that's one of the problems, you know. That's why we talk about like trans lives matter and things like that, and we're in like things within our own community that we're just trying to get through. So for example, we talk about, you know, when we with the Stonewall riots, and like what was her name? The trans activist that was with Marsha P. Johnson, but it wasn't her, the white one. But you know, she called out like the gays, technically, mostly the white mask gays, and it's like, okay, well, you guys, you know, you're benefiting from all this noise that we as a community are making, but you guys who, it's like the same thing that we talk about, have, you know, using your white privilege and to amplify Black voices and Black Lives Matter. You know, we've got your straight acting mask for mask white passing gays that haven't uplifted the voices of our other letters of the community, for example. You know, so it's like it's breaking that down within our own community.
It reminds me of this one episode of Pose, which in and of itself, first of all, Ryan Murphy, thank you for everything you did. Thank you so much for everything, literally everything you do. And Brad Falchuk.
And Janet Mock.
There's one more. What's the other one?
Yes.
What's his name? I forgot. Okay, but there's an episode of Pose where, and anyone who out there watching that doesn't know what Pose is a show that takes place in like the late 80s, 90s, early 90s, around the time of the AIDS epidemic, where it follows trans people and people LGBTQ and
the ballroom scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's one episode where one of the main characters is trying to go to this bar. The bar is like all white dudes essentially, but there's a few Black dudes in that scene. I checked, I actually looked, and but everybody was masculine and they wouldn't serve
the drag queen
at the bar.
The trans girl.
Bro,
the trans girl. That's what it was.
Them. I was like, wait, I could see if there was some side eyes and shade, but y'all wouldn't even let them drink.
But to be honest, we now have such a platform and a pedestal for drag queens and things, and trans women who also perform and stuff. But like that wasn't the norm for a very long time. Like that's like in the past like 2 decades.
And that's
maybe.
due to the
like growing in the past 2 decades.
That's due to ballroom, correct?
I guess.
Yeah,
RuPaul, hello.
And
I wouldn't. Yeah.
RuPaul has been to me
Well,
the first person.
I wouldn't give RuPaul that.
I wouldn't give her. Yeah, I wouldn't give her full credit.
Not full credit.
I think it's just it's a change that
You don't
at
think,
least
you don't think
major LGBT hubs were already making. They were already making the change over to valuing drag queens and drag performers, and then trans by extension, trans performers, and then being more exposed to them in that way made them made us be a little bit more accepting and move in that direction.
But you don't think RuPaul gave you
oh
the
yeah,
sense
I think
of
she's
stability of
I think he's
the limelight
helped.
of it all?
I think he's helped a lot
Platform,
in that way. Yeah.
I mean, that all came by way of club culture and ball culture. So RuPaul was a piece of that, you know, and it just so happens that, you know, in the past, 13 seasons now, the past 13 years or whatever, how many years, you know, RuPaul's Drag Race has been on TV, certainly has done a huge amount to, you know, elevate the LGBT, you know, community, but beyond that, as far as, you know, really doing, and it's an entertainment program, so it really doesn't have that role to, you know, dig into hard topics and talk about hard things, but it could, in small amounts here and there.
Well, it does in small amounts. It does in small amounts.
Small
They
amounts.
actually do.
They do
Tuck,
do it in small amounts.
when they do Tuck, and they talk about behind the scenes, and they talk about the drag queens and their lives and how they're accepted and how they were brought up and raised and how they are affected by them becoming who they are today. They talk about those things, and I think it helps elevate the minds, because like my mom, she was straight in church. She had no idea about drag queens or any of that stuff until I came out, and then she started watching RuPaul, and she's like, "Oh my God, I didn't know. Are you gonna dress up?" I'm like, "No, I don't dress up. That's not who I am.
That's not me, right?
That's not me. There's just another form of LGBTQ community." So
Right.
she's like, "Oh, I didn't know that." So now she's part of the P flag. So those type of things. It helped open up certain things. It brought it to light that she would have never known, because she didn't know nothing about ballroom.
Mm-hmm.
So that it just helped bring different things to her that help her mind open up more about what the gay community goes through and what we are as a community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think when I moved to New York City, I feel like I had met trans women. I probably had met trans women and they passed and I didn't notice it. But I feel like in New York City was the first time I made friends with a trans woman, and then a non-binary person. And then they also they were very much about pointing out anytime I was toxic. I think that was my first time being like, "Oh, am I problematic?" And they're like, "Yes, Garrett, you're super problematic." So yeah, they are always our light posts, or have been the light posts of the LGBTQ community.
Were you ever a Boots goer, by the way?
A Boots?
Boots and Saddles.
Boots and Saddles. Oh no, I didn't make it.
I
I used to go to Barracuda to see the drag show on Mondays.
Oh, Barracuda is good, but Boots and Saddles used to run drag shows all day long. That's why they were like a kind of a drag. They were like a drag mecca for kind of a while. They were across the street from Duplex.
Okay.
They're not there no more.
This is New York.
They're not there.
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
sorry.
No, that's what I mean. They just closed down maybe a year and a half ago, which has been really sad, because it's that was my home bar for years.
Something out to y'all real quick. We talked about RuPaul, and I can't leave the subject without saying this. RuPaul, for me, as a young gay guy who knew he was gay or something, very young. There's this. I know he used to give me shit about it, and I would be so hurt. I would be so hurt. I'm not gay, but I was.
Honey, Godfather knew.
I mean, he's my godfather. He's known me since I was like a little baby. But anyway, so there's a TV show called In the House, and it had Debbie Allen and LL Cool J. And LL Cool J was like this bachelor, and Debbie Allen was like this single mom who had 2 kids and didn't have a place to go because her husband was on a lot of situations. So LL Cool J's best friend from high school was visiting, and all right, cool. RuPaul walks in, but not in drag, right?
Okay.
The episode was basically about him coming out to LL Cool J. Changed my life, because he showed up not in drag, and then what happened was LL Cool J walked in after they just played basketball, and he was, I guess, about to go to a show. For some reason, he walked in and he was in full drag, and it was like, you know. And this is LL Cool J back in the mid 90s, okay?
Yeah.
The height of
the
masculinity.
thing that was beautiful
Yeah.
him as a performer knew that that was an issue that needed to be addressed. I applaud not only RuPaul but also LL Cool J.
Was he a producer?
It doesn't matter. When you are on a show, you're LL Cool J in the '90s, you can decide, hey, I don't want to do this episode.
Right.
He just
Sure,
has
he
to
did
lick
have
his
power.
lips.
He did have
You
power.
know.
And
He did
I
have
think
power.
for him, he played the part of the guy who was in the dark about it and came, well, you my friend, and clearly you're not doing this to get at me, whatever. I love my brother since I was a little kid. So, and that message kind of got lost. I'm thinking anyone who didn't know about that episode, but now you're seeing that you don't have to be in love with somebody to love them. And you don't have to want to screw somebody to love them. And two men can love each other in that way and not both have the same orientation. And I think, especially in our community, the Black community, but I think in communities in general, there needs to be a bigger range for that. Because I know there's some times where outside of even the hookup culture, sometimes people just won't even talk to you in our community if you're not masculine enough, fem enough. Or you're not
They won't hang out with you.
Right. They won't even, the shade will be intense. You know what I'm saying? So I think it comes down to that. And that's why I just wanted to bring up that example, because that was something I learned at a very young age, which helped me to understand that even though I was still figuring things out, I still deserved love beyond physical, if that makes any sense.
And even to touch on a different type of situation, what is the basketball player? Paul, is it Paul Wade or Paul? Is it
Paul
what
Pierce?
Is his name? No, Wade.
Dwayne Wade.
Dwayne Wade. Thank you.
Paul Pierce. Dwayne
Wade. Dwayne Wade. And and his son came out. And
I think she's going by she now.
She is now he is a she, and so it has what is the big guy?
Shaquille O'Neal.
You talking about the rat?
No, the one on the movie theaters.
She's like a designer now or something.
Yeah,
that's the one.
I mean, that in itself has changed a lot of the Black culture too, of how people look at their children coming out or their children becoming a different sex and all that as well.
Yeah,
because
even
now
like
it's something that we have.
Kid.
Go ahead.
Sorry, even just like Will Smith and his kids.
Yes. They're
super public about everything, and it's amazing to see that kind of support and that kind of confidence about not shying away from the public about it, because
Will Smith is supposed to be bi.
Bullshit.
It's a secret hope. It's a secret hope.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Give me a second.
Well, we know him and Jada be open and free.
They had a red table. Well, they didn't talk about their openness, but they avoided it like the plague. They had a whole interview. They had a whole interview about their relationship.
Yeah.
Really?
Well, Jada used to be in Atlanta too. She was out.
Jada?
Yeah, Jada was out for a bit.
That's a whole nother.
I know some of her ex-girlfriends.
Say it again.
I know some of her ex-girlfriends.
But I feel like women have a past when it comes to that. I feel like women, okay, because I personally consider myself bi, but people always ask me, yeah, but you say you're gay. And I was like, well, because you can't really date girls and be openly bisexual. To me, most girls who are dating bi guys don't know that they're bi.
See, while you talking about bi, now you make me feel like I see. I've been listening to Elin Harris's books on tapes, The Invisible Life, and that whole series. Just As I Am. I really want them to bring out a movie into this. I mean,
I haven't even. What's that book? What's the book you said?
Invisible Life.
Okay.
Elon Harris.
Past, Just As I Am. Not Another Day Goes By. It's 12 books.
Why do you sound like Tyler Perry movies?
No, not Tyler. This is before Tyler. This is Elin Harris. And I'm telling you, these books are so entwined, and it talks about being gay, bisexual, the whole lineage of it all. They really need to bring this out as a movie.
Okay.
But I knew that it was one producer was trying, but it was a whole lawsuit that was going on. But it really is the stories are something else. And I think the Black culture really needs these movies, just like they needed Moonlight. This will really help a lot if they can get these. I want to try to help produce it myself. I'm going to work with, I got a cousin that's famous now.
Okay.
So I want
Who you
got a shoe in, right?
I got a cousin that's famous now. He done made a movie called Creed 2.
Okay. Oh, okay now.
I'm going to try to talk to him.
But I definitely think I get what you're saying, because I feel like in we were talking about categories earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I can't stand that word, because to me that word is I read this book. It was about being awake, conscious. That's the word. It's about consciousness. Basically said that categories are what human beings used to further solidify their existence. By defining what you are, I can define what I am not. Therefore defines what I am. But at the truth, we're pretty much something that can't be defined.
Right.
Definition. Right now we're on Zoom because someone decided to call it that. But what it really is it's this bigger thing, and this thing we can't really ever quite wrap our minds around. So categories become, okay, you're white, so that means I'm Black. And you're straight, so that means I'm gay and bi. And at the end of the day, like, there's some people who are totally only attracted to women until they meet that one guy, and then they would make that just that one dude. You know what I'm saying? But does that make them gay? Does it make them, or does it just can't he just be in love with that guy and that be enough? Like, why does it have to have a name? Why does it have to have a title? And I think that goes deeper into what we're talking about now, to further define masculinity or this or that and the third. And it's crazy because when you're talking about gay and LGBTQ, we've already been outcast a lot of the times from our communities. So then to get within our community and then further outcast goes into that idea of hurt people. But then it also goes into this idea that, like, even because in the back of your mind, you're still thinking, yeah, I'm gay, but I'm not that gay.
I think that's something that the younger
gay.
generation has, like, maybe not mastered, but they're
better at it.
They're better at it. They're way more woke. Like they're not.
They had parents that had to go through, and also the internet and stuff. But they had parents who, I feel like there are parents out there who really had to sit down and tell their kids some of this stuff because they either witnessed it or they went through it themselves. But I'm going to cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh no, I'm just saying, like, I've heard like way more stories of, like, like straight or whatever guys that they don't even identify as straight. They're just like, I'm a person. Like, I've had sex with a couple of guys before. Like, I have a girlfriend now, but, like, I've hooked up with guys. Like, whatever, it was something that happened. And I hear it all the time. It's like something that, like, people are just way more fluid. They just go with the flow, these young people. And I'm like, wow, like, that's so, I mean, it's almost revolutionary, I feel, just like in the younger community, to have that kind of freedom and feel like you have that choice to be able to, like,
be open to love.
And also, like, maybe if you want to dress like a girl one day, go to school like a girl, like, you can, because nobody's going to say anything. Nobody cares. Like, I mean,
it doesn't feel like you're making a life decision.
Right. You just feel fancy one day. And some days I want to wear a hat and a dress, like, and I do. Check out my Facebook.
Sometimes you might want to feel fish.
Hello.
Oh my God.
It's funny because we have all this technology now, and just think about all the filters that are on Snapchat and Instagram and all of that. Like, if some straight dude's just sitting at home playing with his filters and he flips on that one where it's like the glam and the glow and the lit,
and they do that.
He has a moment. He's like,
he's allowed to.
Oh, but do I?
Like, yes, queen.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. And they do that.
And we're only laughing because every one of us has had that moment.
Daily.
I have some straight friends that do it, and then they'll post it on Facebook. Oh, I didn't know my phone could do this, but I had to post this.
Yeah, the one with the butterflies on the cheeks and the fucking freckles, and the eyelashes get longer and the whole nine. Yo, but straight dudes love those filters.
I think that goes deeper. Like, go ahead.
Yeah, that allows you to play. It allows you to just have fun with the idea that I could be a woman. Look at me. Ooh, haha. It allows you to kind of feed into that idea of being a child at play, playing with toys, playing with tools, playing with colors, playing with yourself, because you are not beholden to any one label, any one category. You are malleable, and you are constantly growing and changing. So who's to say, like, that might spark something in you to think about things in a slightly different way. Not to say that like a Snapchat filter is going to change your entire world, but it could be a small seed that could lead you into a more open and understanding place down the road. But think of those people that are never exposed to that. They have very, very strict, and these are our parents, these are our grandparents who never had any of those things that we have now available to them, and they only were exposed to again, what their parents told them, what the education system told them, and what society told them, by way of the media, the major media. And that was it. And it was very slim pickings when it came to any of that. But now the whole world is open to them by way of the internet and all this technology and the availability to kind of be exposed to it. And it allows them to just kind of open their own mind so much more easily.
The internet has been like the greatest invention of our age, and it's weird because it's something that we have seen since its inception, and like it's changed so much since like when we first had our dial-ups and things like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that, like what Shelton said about love, I just want to say this really quick. I think that's really what I feel like is key in this whole conversation, is that this toxic masculinity, these toxic femininity, these toxic ideals, they stem from a place of not loving, of being unable to love. And I feel like to remove those things, it starts with you. It starts with you doing your own homework, whether it's reading about, like we talked about at one point, doing research about what's going on with race relations, or having a conversation with someone who you don't agree with or don't understand, and coming at it from a place of, if I was this person that I'm about to talk to, how would I want to be spoken to? And I think that'll all eventually lead to self-love. And then, once that self-love is better, then you're going to get more of that outward love.
Yeah, and that comes from Michael Jackson. Deal with the man in the mirror. Deal with the man in the mirror. If you actually deal with the man in the mirror and actually talk to that person, and you see where your vulnerabilities are, you can change everything in your life. You really can.
Yeah. And they don't have to be vulnerabilities. They can definitely become strengths.
Almost definitely, your vulnerabilities can become strength. I mean, it can help you. You can achieve a lot of things in your life you thought you couldn't because of your self-worth and what you think you're worth now. So, yeah.
Well, I really love this conversation. We're running out of time. So at the end of the show, we always do a final thought. So basically, each person will give their final thought. Tell us how you feel, or what you're leaving with, or what you would like for others to leave with. And I'm going to start with Julie.
Okay. All right. So on the topic, I suppose, of toxic masculinity, really the main thing is to just remember that like it values a lack of empathy more than anything, and like that's just really that's the best way to combat it, is to just be a little bit more empathetic to all the people around you and where they fall on whatever spectrum they exist on. That's just who they are, how they are. You have to connect with them empathetically to really break down the barriers that exist there between you. So it's like that's one of the number one things. And then the second thing is also to be that same way with yourself. Don't think that you have to fall in a specific place or have to exist in that specific place on that scale all the time. You can be wherever you want, however you want, whenever you want. You just embrace the fact that masculinity is a fluid thing, and more importantly that it keeps a balance with femininity. So like you really have to look at them both to be a balanced person. You have to know them both to be a balanced person. So
okay, awesome, thank you for that. Shelton, what about you? What's your final
thought? Well, my final thought goes back to Michael Jackson, the man in the mirror. Just really dealing with that man in the mirror. I mean, helped me in my life. Me taking a look and knowing who I am and loving who I am. But you have to love yourself first to be able to love someone else. And you can't give love without loving yourself first. So do that. Do the homework. Do the work. And put the work in and love yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. What about you, Justin?
So I would just say on this topic of toxic masculinity that, you know, where if you are experiencing it from, you know, from the receiving end, just understand that there are difficulties when encountering any type of paradigm shift, and it's going to be a process for you on the receiving end, and it's going to be a process for them on the originating side to communicate about it, to understand it, and then to try to reconcile and try to correct it. It's not going to be an easy process. It's not going to be, you know, a simple solution, because you're thinking about, you know, taking down some preconceived conditioning that has been so deeply embedded in someone that they don't even realize that they're doing it. So if anything, approach it with patience and approach it with empathy and understanding, so that, you know, if this is someone that you truly and deeply care about and want to enlighten them, then show them the way. You can't push them down the road. You have to help them get there, and they will get there at their own pace. So, you know, empathy and understanding.
Yes. Okay. Garrett.
I was trying to think of something, but
Yo, time is up.
right.
Stream of consciousness, that John.
Yeah, I feel like it's really going inward. I don't know. My experience with toxic masculinity, I feel like I learned a lot from my surroundings, and I'm still unlearning some negative traits that I have. But I mean, it made me who I am today, and I like me as a person. But I just encourage everybody to go inward. Yeah, go inward, which has been the common consensus. But go inward, and it's a constant like education of self.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Chris.
I think my main takeaway from this whole experience has been that, you know, everyone, no matter what, you know, group or subgroup or whatever you identify with, like everyone experiences toxic masculinity in a different way. And, you know, to be sensitive to that, also not only just to, like, you know, the toxic masculinity that you might have experienced in your life, but the toxic masculinity that you experience is not the same that, you know, someone in the Black community or someone in the Latino community or someone in the Asian community may have experienced, and to always be aware that, you know, your experience could be very different. And like everyone else has been saying, to be self-aware, you know, of like Garrett said earlier, when you may be toxic, like when you're being, and also not just going inward, going outward. Surround yourself with people that'll call you out on being toxic. Surround yourself with people that, you know, may not be as like-minded as you are, that are a little bit different than you, that may be trans, that may be bi, that may be, you know, straight, you know, whatever, but that are those type of people that won't allow you to, you know, perpetuate a, you know, a kind of a norm that, you know, has come to be that is not a good one, and, you know, a norm that we need to be trying to break.
Thank you very much. My final thoughts is, it seems sometimes that change is hard. I mean, because it is, but it doesn't mean it's not beneficial. And, you know, growth and change and all these things that we're experiencing, especially things like this right now, is like a lot of this chaos provides us opportunities to do pretty much what everyone's here is doing right now. You know, like these are 6 gentlemen who really don't have differences, but may have never had a chance to discuss something like this if it weren't for some of the chaotic things that are happening. So I say my final thought is take take challenges and turn them into opportunities. Turn them into chances for internal growth, external growth. It is our responsibility to get better. Not mine just for me and yours just for you. It's our responsibility to do it for each other. And like Justin said, it's not about pushing or pulling that person. It's just being there as you want someone else to be there for you. So having said that, I want to say thank you to all of my panelists again. Thank you for joining us. Remember to like, comment, subscribe to this channel. And this is Talk It Out, where we talk it out. Keeping in mind that it's not always about being right or wrong. It's about listening and being heard. Good night. Thank you to all of my panelists again. Thank you for joining us. Remember to like, comment, subscribe to this channel. And my name is Duryea Rashad, and this is Talk It Out, where we talk it out. Remembering that it's not about who's right or wrong. It's about keeping in mind that it's best to be heard. And I just said it all wrong. It's not about proving who's right or wrong. Let me try it again. We'll edit it. It's not about
we'll edit that out.
Do we need to